Part 88. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 879. The Yanj drama began to enter the entertainment industry and became a director with background and funds but no experience at all. Probably everyone was waiting to see her jokes on the street. But one after another, she gradually made a name for herself in this industry, and even her own film and television company. This woman is really different from before. Probably she was too busy. By contrast, the old man was a bit leisurely, so most of the morning and evening at the dinner table, Luo Fei was sitting opposite the old man. From the very beginning, the old man proudly exaggerated in front of Luo Fei, "Our family is really powerful, and we can play with those old things at a young age." In the future, it became a net fighting web drama. I didn't take her own body seriously. Alas, you said that she was afraid that I would have no children with her in the future. In case I have it gone, won't she rely on it? She's a girl, why bother to fight so hard? I gave her everything I could give her, why would she have to work so hard? Luo Fei did not comment. Kexan, but a spirit. She probably thought so. She had such a strong self-esteem that even if the old man made a will to give her everything, to her, those things were not hers. He remembered that the day he went abroad, she rarely sent a message to him, "Although I married the old man, you can rest assured that what belongs to you will be yours in the future, and I will not fight with you." His heart was chaotic at the time, and he did not take her words at all. Looking back now, I suddenly understood the meaning of her words. After knowing it, my heart became even more inflamed. I can't say what kind of emotion it is, I feel really suffocated. However, this radon has nowhere to vent. It was almost 2 months since he returned home, but he still could not see her. He is busy, she is busier than him. So in addition to learning her news from the old man, Luo Fei can only read her news from the gossip news. It was strange that he didn't know why he was following her news. Probably, I admire her dregs who didn't learn anything when she was a child. She felt admiration at a glance and now she has been struggling to the top of her life every day. So I pay more attention to it and want to see if she can what height to go. In the blink of an eye, on the occasion of her birthday, the old man deliberately discussed with Lofi in the dining room and planned to organize her birthday party. Of course, it is up to his cheap son to present flowers for his stepmother. The old man probably wanted to shut up all the negative news about her in the media. For Luo Fei, this is a handoff, and he will naturally not refuse. This birthday, not only the old man invited a lot of people, even she also invited countless people in the entertainment industry. He also met her ex-boyfriend and ex-boyfriend again, oh, and First Love. First Love is one of her investors, and her 2 former boyfriends have now become her actor and acted in a suspense online drama together. Both are male. Since she had laughed at things that Lian Ji and Ji didn't understand, he now knew what was. He really didn't understand. The 2 little white faces had a fight as soon as they met, and now they played a couple of screen lovers, still male and male. It was disgusting to think about. Goosebumps. Sure enough, the enemy of the enemy is a friend. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 880. The 2 little white faces seemed to unite and wanted to pry at the corner of the old man. Luo Fei felt suitable to sit idly by. However, when I saw Yan Ji and the 2 little white faces were very close, he suddenly felt that, as the son of the old man, he should not look at the old man with a pile of green grass on his head and remain indifferent. However, apparently the old man did not have such a vicious look, and he smiled and patted the shoulders of the 2 little white faces, indicating that he would have time to come home and sit together. As Luo Fei sat silently at the table and looked coldly at everything around him, Yan Ji brought a glass of wine and walked to him. "Thank you for the flower you just sent, I like it very much." Luo Fei felt that she should be polite and smiled at her and encouraged or praised her. But with a stretched face, I couldn't laugh and couldn't encourage it. After all, she is not his sister now, but one of his little stepmothers. So after a long while, under her gaze, she only said indifferently, "Oh." A moment later added, "It was picked by the old man." She laughed, pursing her lips, her eyes bright and bright. "The old man knows me quite well." She drew heavy makeup, very strong makeup. However, it is not obtrusive, nor does she seem old-fashioned, but it gives a feeling that she is very delicate and elegant. He met her with a smile, but didn't know what he should say. After returning to China for so long, every time I watched her drunk from the car late at night, it was the first time I met her so closely. I was looking forward to speaking a few words to her, but I was really face to face, but I didn't know what to say. In the end, it was just one sentence, "Happy birthday." She didn't reply thank you, but smiled slightly as she heard a funny joke. With a smile, he reached out and patted his shoulder. "There are a lot of girls in my company. Think about what you like, and I will introduce you next time." Before he responded, she turned and smiled and chatted happily with the people at the other table. Luo Fei stared at her back. He didn't know why she smiled, and he didn't know how she said that. After a while, the old man called him and asked him when he had time, the first annual meeting in her company, and the old man asked him to go to the platform together. Luo Fei did not want to go, but agreed. After I went there, I saw the two little white faces again. When the two little white faces met the old man, they both smiled forward and greeted the old man. Luo Fei looked aside and felt that the smiles of the two little white faces were really bad. When I saw her, I realized that her makeup looks more refined than that of her birthday, and the whole person also has a strong and powerful look. She is nothing like before. Why are those two little white-faced ones still sticking to her? Especially the old man. Doesn't the old man just like a soft girl and hate a businesswoman the most? Why are you so precious to her today? After a circle at the annual meeting, boring Luo Fei, his eyes fell on the words with the old man holding hands. In such a banquet of handsome men and women, she is still the brightest one. After reflecting that his gaze fell on her for a long time, he hurriedly retracted his gaze and went to the bathroom. When I came out of the bathroom, I didn't enter the banquet room again, but went to the door to blow hair. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 881. After returning to Luo Fei was one of the few when she met her, but every time she met, she laughed all the way. No matter who she was talking to, she was smiling with joy. She resembled the rebel like Gunpowder in the past, totally two looks. She was not happy in the past, but what about her now? Is she happy? The thought came out ridiculous. Especially when the night breeze blew, it made him feel more like he was full and supported. After the annual meeting, the family of three returned in a car. The driver drove, Luo Zi and Yanj sat in the back, Luo Fei sat in the front. Almost all of the little girls in our company are here today. Do you like a fi? The voice of the song rang suddenly, especially the intimacy of a fi, which made Luo Fei's heart excited. He heard his voice, and responded indifferently, "Thank you, no need." Su felt that his tone was not good. Luo Zi said to Yanj, "You don't need to worry about him. You look at his temperament." Yan Song laughed. Luo Fei thought she would continue to say something, but she didn't speak anymore, and the laughter gradually disappeared. He looked slightly from the rear-view mirror, and she nestled on the old man's shoulder. She was about drunk, her face red fluttering, seems to be sleeping. He retracted his gaze, his eyes dropped, and nothing sounded in his ears, leaving his heartbeat. After a while, it seemed like a swing frame swinging in the air, dangled, and never realized. When I got out of the car, the old man's footsteps staggered, and he wanted to drink too much. He listened to her and said, "Don't help me, I'll let a Fei help me, Uncle Wang, you help Mr. Yufu, he drank too much today." The driver Uncle Wang immediately held the old man. Her hand was also handed to him. Luo Fei did not speak, holding her hand in one hand, holding her waist slightly with one hand, and slowly moving forward. The smell of wine on her body is very strong, but what is mixed in the smell of wine is the sweet and soft smell of a woman that belongs to her. In this breath that could drunken people, he thought of the days when she lived with him under the same roof. When he cooks, she helps, she can turn around a little, and she can stick to her body. The smell of the good body wash on her will fill his whole head, which makes him always relaxed. And a delicate state of pleasure. It's been a long time ago, but now those pictures are clearly in my mind. His thoughts were interrupted at this time, and he heard her say, "Africa, don't worry, men are relatively late, and you will definitely meet a girl you like." "Can you?" "Will not. He won't meet again." She laughed lowly, and said, "Afi, you don't inherit an old man at all." Almost her whole body was nestled on his shoulders, and when she spoke to him, the breath of wine slammed on his face. He didn't drink much alcohol at first, but now, suddenly he felt like he was drunk, he was top-heavy, and it seemed that she hadn't fallen because she was all by her side. Therefore, the place where the two people's limbs were connected made him feel closer and hot. He didn't even hear what she was asking. Naturally, there was no answer. As soon as she stepped up, her heels fluttered towards the steps, and Luo Fei took her into her arms in time, listening to her voice and humming in pain, "The feet hurt. After my death, the villain blackened again." Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 882. The body in his arms was soft, and his brow frowned slightly on his small face, seeming extremely painful. Luo Fei hesitated for a moment, and then she hugged her horizontally. With both hands, she took the neck around him and giggled, "Luo Fei, have you never held a woman like this, now holding your little stepmother, what's the feeling in your heart? Do you want to fall?" The former loser glanced back and said nothing. Luo Fei's body was tight and her lips were tight. She didn't know how she thought about it. I thought she would continue to make fun of him, but she said nothing, but put her head on his chest. Her cheeks were hot, and his chest seemed to be familiar. When he entered the room, he was going upstairs behind the old man, but she said, "You put me on the sofa. I remember the medicine in the first aid box in the locker." The old man has been helped upstairs by Uncle Wang. Luo Fei put her on the sofa, and found the medicine box again. Seeing that she was asleep on the sofa's pillow, he hesitated slightly, and then she squatted to help her take off her high heels. She wore stockings and could no longer help her to take them off. He carefully cut the stockings with the small scissors in the medicine box. At a glance, her ankle was already swollen. No wonder she shouts pain. He applied the medicine to the red and swollen ankle, and rubbed her for a while as instructed. Her feet are small, and white, her 5 toes are rounded and small, and they look very nice. He squeezed, his eyes gradually attracted by her feet. Her voice sounded at this moment, "Does my foot look good?" He heard that his face flushed instantly. She let her feet go as she burned her hands. Yanj didn't need him to respond, chuckled, and said, "The old man likes my feet the most. I remember when he was young, he liked to play with my feet. It was a special hobby." He was extremely embarrassed. At this moment, he had a feeling of restlessness and embarrassment. He turned to leave, and she took one of his fingers. "Brother," she called softly, dragging his finger repeatedly. As if his finger was plasticine. The heart he had been surrounded by toughness, because of her soft whistle, suddenly collapsed. Looking down, she sat with her head against one of his legs, looking up, a pair of misty eyes drenched in wine, looking at him. "Brother, am I terrible?" She didn't ask what she said. But he instantly understood that she was asking him that her achievements today are not great. She looked at him with anticipation, so he suddenly remembered the picture that he was looking forward to being bragged by the old man with his academic results as a kid. Great. His hand touched her head and rubbed lightly. Very powerful. Yeah, she used to be a wasteful second generation, who can walk step by step until now, who dares to say that she is not great. She pinched his leg, as if she had sugar, and smiled with joy. With a ridiculous smile, tears rolled up in his eyes and he murmured, "I'm so powerful, why aren't I happy?" He touched her head and froze, and he heard his voice gently and tremblingly ask her, "Why not happy?" She didn't respond. He looked down and realized that she was holding his leg and fell asleep. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 883. There were tears on her face. Luo Fei looked down at her with such a small appearance, wondering when it was soft. She placed her carefully on the sofa and took a thin blanket from above to cover her. She fell asleep, he said, and spent the night like that. The night passed too fast. He watched her quiet facial features when she fell asleep, and wanted to get closer a few times, but in the end, she sat still. Before she woke up, he went to the company and asked his servant to look after her. On this day, Luo Fei was all in a state of distress. After knowing something, I suddenly noticed some unknown feelings in my heart. Why is he having such a thought? He was like a child who did something wrong, carefully hiding these things little by little, for fear of others seeing, and only when night is quiet, will he indulge himself and miss her. Marriage has 7 years of itching. However, Yanj and Luozi, less than 3 years sweet, began a war between husband and wife. However, basically every time, he ended up admitting that he was wrong. However, the sweet state could not last long after the reconciliation, and it started with Lo's yelling at home. The old man probably had nowhere to tell, and every time he quarreled with his little wife, he would take Luo Fei out to borrow wine to sorrow. Drink some wine and pour the beans, pouring out all the conflicts with her and the source of the quarrel. The old man said that she was hot with a few small fresh meat in the company, that she went out to play with her first love partner again, and said that she was very wild now. It's just a runaway wild horse, and the old man's head is a green grassland. The old man can't control her, but he is not reconciled. Luo Fei advised him, since we're not together, let's get divorced. In this age, divorce is much simpler than getting married. Besides, he didn't think the old man could live with her from the beginning. The old man heard the words, staring at Luo Fei with red eyes, glaring and staring, crawling on the table like a child and crying, "I don't want to divorce, I don't divorce." The old man cried and murmured, "Except her, I have no interest in other women. I only want her in my life, I only want her. When she was young, she listened to me so much, she obviously depended on me so much, how did she change?" Luo Fei listened to the old man talking to himself, with no joy or sorrow in his heart. When she was young, she was so weak, what could she do if she didn't listen to the old man's words, but now she is different. She is much stronger than before. She doesn't need to listen to anyone anymore. He could see clearly as a bystander, but the old man couldn't understand. Before Luo Fei had time to talk to her, the old man woke up and went to her to apologize in tears. Once he was in the living room, the old man knelt in front of her, crying with her legs and begging her for forgiveness, and assured him that she would never doubt her in the future. As he looked at her, her gaze came just as well. The 4 eyes were relatively short-lived. After a moment, he bowed his head and pretended to see nothing and continued to eat. Although he was eating, but didn't know why, he remembered that when she was a kid, she and other boys played hand in hand at a banquet, but the old man saw it. The old man was also sitting at the table at that time, eating indifferently, and the little girl stood beside the old man and cried whiningly, saying, "Uncle, I was wrong. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 884. Obviously, after years, things suddenly appeared in Luo Fei's mind, and it was still so clear. Especially her weak voice of injustice at that time, she didn't realize it at the time, but now when she thinks back, she feels sour. Luo Fei squeezed the spoon in his hand tightly. He felt that his heart was immersed in water, could not breathe, and had difficulty breathing. He knew it later and suddenly responded. What she is doing now is revenge. It is not the husband and wife war caused by the disagreement with the old man's personality, age, and social circle. Instead, it was her revenge. She did all this, it turned out to be revenge. Lazar wants to move out. I don't know why. Just like before, watching them roar. It is just that the old man was the leader, but now she is the leader. When will this life end? He tried to talk to her once, but she was always busy. He called her several times, and she always said, "I'll hang up if it's all right." He didn't know if he had anything to do with her. He didn't want to sit idly by this time. He didn't want her to spend the rest of her life with the old man. However, he didn't know what to do. He couldn't get started. So noisy, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. She and the old man seemed to enjoy themselves, and when they were noisy, they were dying to live, and even he was anxious. However, after the quarrel between them, he and Mai Mei are still sweet, and he has not been relieved from the restlessness. Their lives are getting busier, especially her, not only running around the country, but not even abroad. Because of this, there were only a handful of meetings when they met each year, and most of the things about her were learned from the old man. For example, which little fresh meat she has been hot with recently, and which ex-boyfriend has broken off the wire. As well, she felt that her family wanted to have a child. The old man was legated. She was too busy with her career and her physical constitution was worse than before. She wanted a child of her own. The old man is always sad when he talks about it. Luo Fei also learned her life from the intermittent words of the old man. She is the daughter of an old man's first love. First love is not good enough, but the child is irresponsible because of the child. First love is a big belly and has no face to go home, and because of lack of money, malnutrition. The child was born prematurely in the middle of the night, and she lost her first love before she had time to go to the hospital, and she was thin and hugged by the old man like a hairless mouse. At that time, the old man was a half-large kid, and he shoved her with of urine. Luo Fei was skeptical of the old man's words. However, he naturally would not question. Because of the physical weakness brought about by the beating of her mother, even when she was raised from a young age, her body did not improve. And what worries the old man most is that she also belongs to a condition of uterine malformation. If she were pregnant, she could easily kill 2 lives. After the old man dumped another bucket of beans, he finally stared at Luo Fei drunkenly. "Fei, otherwise you have a child for her, you don't know she's been enchanted recently because of the child's affairs. But she really couldn't get pregnant. You gave her a baby to play with, and maybe she just lost her desire to get pregnant. After my death, the villain blackened again." Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 885. Fei, it's not easy for me to raise you with A and a P. From childhood to big, what you want and what I want to do, I have never deducted you. Now I let you have a child, so easy matter, wouldn't you refuse? Luo Fei's heart was agitated, and he didn't understand why the old man had such terrible thoughts. He turned and left. I refuse. After a pause, he said again, if this is her idea, you ask her to come to me and say. The old man sighed, you and Mingming have always been intolerant. How could she have such an idea? Fei, can you not be prejudiced against Mingming? This idea is my idea. Luo Fei's footsteps paused, he didn't respond anymore, and turned to leave. Is he biased against her? He and she have been intolerant? Why, he never knew. I went on a business trip to another place because I had to go to a branch midway. In the last few days, the weather was not good. Luo Zi was afraid that things would be delayed and he just went by car. As soon as she was out of Beijing, she received a call from her, where are you? He glanced at the passing sign and reported where he was. She said, just right, let the driver turn around and pick me up in Fengqiao Town. Fengqiao Town is not far from Beijing and is a place where many film and television dramas are planned. It's not too far away. Luo Fei has no objection. Although she was surprised by the phone call today, she doubted whether the old man turned his back and gave her the conversation with him yesterday. Some guilty, he did not ask her again. It took less than half an hour to reach Fengqiao Town, and Luo Fei seemed to be talking to Han Yi while watching her at the roadside. For so many years, the US$ and Han Yi have been walking around her, and now the old man is so angry when he talks about these two men. It is Luo Fei, so sitting in the car watching her and Han Yi standing together, suddenly there is a natural illusion of a pair of handsome men and women. Is she willing to divorce with Han Yi now? If she wants a divorce, he will support her and help her persuade the old man together. But what did she think? As soon as his window was pressed, she strode over and waved goodbye to Han Yi while walking. Because it was a commercial car, there was a lot of space in the car, but as soon as she got on the car, he felt like the air was stagnant. He reminded her to fasten her seat belt and asked, where are you going? Yan Ji asked him if he had any wine, and saw his frown slightly, and said with a smile, water is fine, too thirsty. Luo Fei took out the thermos pot from the drawer under the side of the coffee table, poured her a cup of hot water and handed it to her. Yan Ji laughed. On the internet, the men holding the thermos pot are all middle-aged people. Luo Fei, do you think you are already middle-aged? He remembered her 20 years old and said that she was getting old. He still thought that she said it was ridiculous, but now he also feels like he is very old and old. There was always water in the car to make coffee, but he didn't explain it in detail, only a little Afraid of delaying her, he asked, where are you going? I'll let the driver take you there. Yan Ji dangled the glass in his hand, and said a few moments of silence, I'm not busy these days. Where are you going? I'll follow you and live 2 quiet days. He nodded. I wanted to ask, but didn't ask. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 886. Luo Fei waited for her to continue talking. But she didn't, and drank the water. She lay the chair on her back, squinting as if she was sleeping. The car was a bit cold, and Luo Fei raised the temperature a bit, holding the information in her hand to look at, but her eyes fell on her from time to time. Is she irritable because of things with the old man? Or is it because of something in the company? Raising the sound insulation board, Luo Fei called her with courage and whispered, Qingming. Yanj snorted from his nose, huh? Divorce the old man. He stared at the expression on her face, seeing that she heard it, without even frowning, and said, Little Korean is very good. He still only has you in mind. The old man is divorced and can marry Xiao Han. Yan Ji opened his eyes at this moment, and Huivu's eyes looked at him as if he had reached the bottom of his heart, and he could peep out those thoughts in his heart. He felt a sudden guilty conscience, which he could not say. The air seemed to freeze. Breathing is a bit difficult. He lowered his head slightly, trying to avoid her gaze. Yanj said at this time, "Are you afraid I will toss the old man to death?" He looked up at her in astonishment. She looked at him, her lips raised, and smiled slowly. "Also, you are his biological son. It is normal to have such concerns." She didn't wait for Luo Fei to justify, and continued, "You can't bear the old man's death, and I can't bear it. After all, I've raised him from a young age. I have no health and nourishment. Toss to death. I don't mean that." Listening to the song, the more and more he said, Luo Fei said quickly, "I don't mean it, Qingming, you are not happy with the old man, I don't want you to be wronged like this." He paused, and opened his mouth to speak again, and immediately said, "Qingming, you are still young, you still have a lot of time, why don't you waste your good time on the old man's body, it's too much to draw." Yan Ji reached out his hand and covered his face for a long time. Seeing her like this, Luo Fei softened ignorantly and unconsciously, "Qingming, I just want you to live well. But my life has been ruined long ago." The voice of Yan Ji was low, soft, like a catkin floating in the air, and it was blown away. "Brother, I have fallen into the magic and can't look back." Her words made him suddenly pain in the chest. Luo Fei's hand squeezed tightly and released. "You still have a lifetime and a lot of time. In addition to the old man, countless men are waiting to hold hands with you for a lifetime. Qingming, the past has passed, people must look forward. My life has already been advanced in advance." Yan Ji put down his hand, closed his eyes, and said, "Brother, I haven't slept for 2 days, I will sleep for a while." Luo Fei looked at her eyes, which were still trembling, although her eyes were closed. For a long time, she whispered, "Qingming, I will support you no matter what time." She didn't say anything, she didn't have heavy makeup on her face, her eyes were blue, and her face was tired. These days, she is really tired. The car galloped all the way and stabilized after getting on the high speed. She was breathing smoothly and was already asleep, and Luo Fei was not sleepy. He held the file in his hand and stared at her without blinking. In her mind, she echoed those words she had just said. How can he help her? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 887. In the past few days, Yanj has been with Luo Fei. When I arrived, I opened a suite-style room in the hotel, Yanj sleeping room, and Luo Fei sleeping room. Most of the time, Luo Fei is busy going out in the morning, and in the afternoon, the two will go around the snack street near the hotel together. She likes to eat the mutton soup from the alley at the end of the alley. When he returned to the hotel, he often brought her a copy. The ant who sold the mutton soup recognized her. Every time he went, he always asked, "It's you, does your daughter-in-law eat it?" She doesn't like to eat onions, so I won't put onions. He didn't correct it, but because of his aunt's words, he was ecstatic all the way. Like a poor boy who picked up money, he couldn't be happy, and he was afraid that others might grab it, so he was very disturbed. This kind of day is really leisurely, just like the sunshine flowing slowly in my heart. But such a small joy was also smashed by her. In the morning, she rarely got up early. When the two went to eat mutton soup together, the aunt jokingly said, "The young couple have such a good relationship, they are handsome, a perfect match." He hurriedly looked up at her, but she didn't seem to hear it, pouting at her aunt and then bowed her head. After dinner, on the way back to the hotel, Yan Ji tilted his head and asked him, "Brother, what kind of girl will you marry in the future? What kind of girl do you marry?" Luo Fei never thought about it. His wife's column has always been blank. Hearing her question, he froze. "I never thought about getting a wife." Yan Ji tilted his head and stared at him with a smile, and he gradually became guilty and blushed. He heard her say, "Brother, don't learn old man in the future." As soon as he was excited, he understood the meaning of her words. She was afraid that he would also raise a little girl to do the kind of incompetent cultivation. "I won't," Luo Fei said immediately, his expression very firm. "I won't do that kind of thing." Yan Ji nodded, "Brother, I believe in you." With a few words, the heart that he originally raised was instantly filled with joy. But the joy, such as the fireworks blooming, has become an indescribable loneliness and joy. "Qingming," he said, "you divorce the old man." This time, she did not refute her like she did last time. Is she, too, shaken? Maybe it's been a wonderful time together. He paralyzed himself and inflated his desires. Several times, she secretly clutched Binan's small hand, shaking as she walked very close to his hand. With just a touch, you can be close together. He courageously tried to hold her hand. He felt that he should understand something with her today. But she was about to touch her hand. She suddenly turned around and went to the small car selling flowers and pointed at a big prickly pear and said to him, "Brother, buy me a prickly pear, and you owe me what about a birthday present." He fell with her finger on the prickly ball, and the courage that he evoked seemed like a balloon packed with prickly prickles, and instantly stunned. Luo Fei paid and held the big fairy ball in her arms. Naturally, she could no longer hold her hand. He suspected that she was aware of her careful thinking. Does she know? Yan Ji suddenly put his arms in his arms, and smiled and asked him, "Brother, this fairy ball should be very good to feed. Will you support it?" The sun fell on her face, and her smile seemed brighter and brighter. He murmured and his heart flew up. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 888. Such a time is like it was stolen, and sooner or later it must be returned. Luo Fei has been trying to delay, staying in the hotel for 7 or 8 days, but in the end, he still has to go back. On the way back, Yan Ji excitedly looked at the scenery passing by the window and asked him without looking back, "Luo Fei, have you never tried to run away from home?" "Well, no." The words went on and on, talking about those great accomplishments of running away from home. "The first time I ran away from home was when I was 6 years old, and I was carried back by the old man before I left the door. The second time I ran away from home was 10 years old. I wanted to leave the school and go to fly high. As a result, I was chased by a dog all the way out of the school. The dog was bitten on the leg by the dog. Vaccine, that vaccine needle really hurts. Now I do not remember how it ran, just remember the pain of injection. The third time was at the age of 12. I wanted to go to my mother and ran to the police station to ask my mother where she went. As a result, she was brought back by the old man. Later that time, you also knew that I was sitting in a taxi to the airport, and I was so happy that I felt like I had a new life." Luo Fei never knew that she should have had so many running aways. He had no idea how he would answer her. How could he ignore her so far? What about her? What did she think of him in her heart? He ignored her so much. Did she regret him and hate him? He wanted to ask, but didn't dare. He didn't expect that he would have such a weak time. Yanj tied her big wavy hair into a ponytail. She lay on the window and looked out, leaving a back for Luo Fei. Luo Fei stared at her slender waist. At this moment she even wanted to step forward and take her in her arms. But in the end, she just said to her, "As long as you are willing, you are always new." Yanj shook his head, "I've tried it." She turned her head and looked at him with a grin, "Brother, what is your dream?" Obviously do not want to continue the topic just now. Luo Fei returned, "I have no dreams." He did what he wanted to do. Yanj continued with a smile and said, "I, like my brother, Have done everything I want to do. She lay back in her chair and played with her mobile phone. Obviously he did not plan to speak to Lofi again. Luo Fei's thoughts turned because of these words. He felt that he still had dreams. However, that dream is out of reach, and no matter what he does, it cannot be realized again. Qingming, you. He was about to speak, and the cell phone of the song rang at this moment. It was Han Yule's call and asked where the song was. I haven't seen you for a long time. I really miss you. My brother introduced me to a blind date again. I'm annoyed. If I really want to get married, there are all girls around. I can beckon with a lot of beckons. Where can I use them? Qingming, when can you come back? I feel like I have a grievance and want to tell you, you do know the of the dollar, and he has issued a draft of my traffic again. Has that guy already empathized with you? Don't fall in love, you like me instead, you can't be afraid if you think about it. Han Yi on the other side of the phone was particularly talkative, and Yan Ji pressed the phone hands-free. As a result, Han Yi's words were clearly understood. When this little white face was talking to her, she had to report to her several times a day. She was disgusting and not disgusting.